So our class today is going to be on the specifics that we will be adding to make our stories better and more understood. Now, to be able to talk about specifics, we need to be able to talk about, first of all, what are we being specific about? So I'm going to start with a quick review of last time's lesson, where we talked about ideas, and then we're going to go into specifics. So why are the techniques for coming up with ideas so important? And we spent a whole class on it last time. Because when we ask our students to come up with something, think of a story, think of an inspiring moment, we draw blanks. It's something that we talked about called writer's block. And there can also be a speaker's block, where the person who is supposed to talk about something and make something up can find it most difficult. I can tell you from myself, for example, that sometimes if you have a friend's birthday and they're like, think of a story of this person, something which, inspires you or interests you. And you're like, exactly now, I can't think of anything, And when we need to come up with things, usually like for birthdays, for family engagements, it's not uncommon to draw a blank. If I tell you right now, think of a moment where you overcame a difficulty. You're like, I don't know. Like let's try this together, sort of in a show of faces. So can anyone right now, if you think of a difficulty that you can overcome, raise your hand. Think of a difficulty that you overcame. As soon as you have one, just pick your hand up. Show of hands. All right, I see one. Keep the hands up. Think of a moment of difficulty over two. I see two.
In writing or what?
No, just think of a difficult moment on your life. Very, very open. Okay. Great. 3, 4. It's taking us some time. So we've given it right now 15, 20 seconds. Okay, you can put the hands down. Thank you. So we see that we've given this a few seconds to think of something we overcame. Let's try another one. Let's think of a moment. Can you all see each other, by the way?
No.
Nope. All right. So I'll stop the share.
Yes.
Okay. So let's try this again. Let's pick some hands up for this. Let's think on a moment where we were late for something important. As soon as you remember such a story, please pick your hands up. The time you were late for something important. Okay. I think Rav Vital has a particularly good memory for this. Keep your hands up. Let's keep thinking. Late for something important. Okay, we see 1, 2, 3. I see 4. Okay, so Chofit, you don't have any story, right? Oh, I see here. Don't have an accident. That's
okay. No, it's okay. Not a story that I can think of right now.
Exactly, not a story we can think of right now. Okay, let's try another one. Miriam, do you have a story of yourself when you were late at some point? No is a completely legitimate answer. No. Okay.
I don't remember now.
I don't.
Anything.
But you were late in your life.
Yes.
You could remember a time when you were late, and it probably bothered you then, but you can't right now.
Yes.
Okay, let's try a different one. Okay, let's imagine our mother preparing a food we really like. As soon as you can think of what that food is, pick your hand up. Wow, what a difference. All right, let's keep your hands up, please. Okay, Sabina, what is the food that comes to mind?
For example, I can think of an avocado salad.
Avocado salad. Wait, let's go. Okay, excellent. Avocado salad. Lena, Was your hand up? No? Can you think of a food that your mother prepared at some point that you like?
No, I don't like my mom's food. She cooks a Russian food and I hate it.
What's a
Sorry.
food you hate that she made?
All the Russian foods with no spices, I don't like it.
Pick one. What's one food that you particularly don't like?
All kind of soups, just a bit salted and nothing else, just the water. And no, I don't like it.
Okay, wonderful. But you can see that you clearly remember it. So it's like, so that's the specifics. Not she couldn't think of something, she just couldn't think of something she liked. Revital, what food did you like?
Which Revital?
Both of you. We'll start with you.
Soup of spaghetti. A red soup with spaghetti.
Wonder.
And
Okay.
potatoes and chicken.
Okay. Revital. Other
Couscous.
Revital. Couscous. All right. Let's go with Inav. What's a food that you liked that your mom made?
Couscous, Cuba.
All right. Excellent. So we can see here, if we look, we saw each other. We've been late in our lives. We have had challenges that we have overcome. We are the center of our own story. And yet, when I asked us to remember it on the spot, we drew a blank. How many hands do we get? 3, 4 after 20 seconds. So the same process to recall something in real time, and the difficulty doing it, if we have this trouble and we're here with, years of public speaking and educating experience, we should have mercy on our students who are told, now come up with a story in a situation. There are courses and articles to help people prepare stories for work interviews and job interviews. So when they say, tell us your weakness, tell us a moment you've overcome, tell us of a time you worked in a team, have the stories ready, because we don't naturally remember. We get writer's block when we're put on the spot to access, mid or long-term memory. We can be, as it says here, unable to produce ideas. But if we release us from that and bring us to things which are safer, not directly associated with us, we're able to sidestep this process and to start thinking. Okay, and this brings us to how do you come up with ideas, which is what we talked about last class for those who were here. And we talked about anchor, trigger, and discover. Anchor, as we said, is a piece of text that writes a prompt that gets our mind started on something. For example, I said, imagine a food your mother makes. We're going back to these images. Suddenly there's a connection. A story can be created here. A trigger is then what can come out of that. We suddenly have a grounding to start from. And I could make a similar association if we think of a pet or an animal that we liked in our lives at some point. Also, something pops in our mind, or if we had an animal we didn't like, the same kind of thing. Asking people about these situations that don't have to do with them and themselves and that type of recall. And finally, discover is that once you have an idea, you can dig deeper. We have a starting point. We're not lost. If we think.
Daniel, can I ask a question, please?
Once I finish with this, we'll have questions.
Okay.
So throughout this process, this is just one way for us to come up with ideas, and a process of asking a story or a situation that doesn't put us on the spot and lets us think of something more clearly. And one of the ideas that we had as our theme from last week was thinking we have a vacation coming up. What is something to do with that we would like potentially? Now, we're much better at analyzing situations than we are sometimes thinking on the spot. And this is why for today, we're going to start working on the stories that we're going to perfect over this week and next week. Okay, any questions before we continue? Yes.
What's the difference between digger, you said, and anchor? What was the second step?
So anchor is first you find something which is.
No, I know what is everything, but what is the difference between them?
Between anchor and trigger, or between all three?
Yes, trigger, yes.
Okay, so trigger is once you have an anchor and you're stably somewhere, different things can come to mind. Instead of seeing complete blank, if I say right now, imagine mother's cooking, this can trigger you, for example, as it did with Lena, that she didn't actually like the soup, and that brought an association with, mother's food being specifically without spices. So that's a whole direction that can go. But for others of us, we can feel warmth. So the story that anchors us can lead to many different places. And it can start a place of being able to securely write the story. And if we stop and think about our anchor, we can find it can give us a few different options. For example, I had the couscous when I was 5, when I was 10, when I was 12. So the starting point, once we're there, once we have that initial place, can lead to different types of triggers. And if we give ourselves a bit more time, it can do more. So is that clear? Okay. So this is one way to sidestep writer's block. It's not the only one, but it is one that we're going to use for taking our story forward. Okay. So what I want us to do right now is a little bit about specifics. 1 second, let's get back to the slideshow.
I have a question. How imagination is, if someone has a good imagination, is it influenced on the 3 anchored, trigger, or discovered? Or
If someone has a good imagination, then that would be the equivalent of the anchor point. Like they would make up where their starting point is. Like if I told you I'll write the story of a prince who has to, steal his crown back from a dragon, we already have to work with that as an anchor. So the anchor point can be sometimes more creative than others. Usually when we have a place to start, our creativity can flow. Okay, so with ideas and overcoming writer block, I want us to get into specifics. And if we remember last week, we wrote a bunch of stories or introductions to stories, more correctly, that we can use for our public speeches with some great titles. I have them written down here, like London, Here I Come, if we remember that whole story. So we have some really great starting points. So for those of you who have your story titles from last time, we can keep working with those if we want to. Okay, so moving on to specifics. What does the word specific mean? Sabina, please read.
A minute. Okay. Specific, clearly defined or identified.
Okay, and what is the definition?
Definition, the exact meaning of something.
Excellent. Okay, so for us, what our focus is going to be on today is to take the ideas that we have from our prompts last week and to fill in the specific elements and try to bring it together as more of a story. Okay, and I'll give us an example of what that it looks like in 1 second, and how being specific is not natural to us, but how that gives our story so much more power. Okay, so the story-driven narrative, the structure of a single story, that's what we're going to be working on this week and next week, is a single story from a beginning to an end. The story must have an ending. So it starts with wherever we start and it ends where it ends. The speaker, us, we're going to relive our experience, either real or made up. And at the end, there can be some kind of logical conclusion. Okay, so what I want us to do right now, with as much exact definition as we can, is to write a short story. The story we had the title for last time, I'd like it now to be written out as a story which starts wherever we did. So if we take like Odaya's idea about shopping in the morning of Hanukkah, so she needs to start in the morning and talk about what happened. Asamo's story of South America is not what you think. If you want to continue with that one, would need, where is it starting? Like we have a conclusion, but we're not sure. Okay. Now, the new thing I want us to try here over last week is, if you're unsure about something, try to make it specific. And I'll take an example of my conversation that I had with Lena 5 minutes ago as an example. When I said, what is your mother's food? Oh, it's food that I didn't like. What type of food? Russian food. Okay, what type of Russian food? A soup, a watery soup. And we could have kept going. But if I tell you my mother made a food I don't like, is very different from my mother made a soup with potatoes and pickles that tasted like heated pickle juice. One is the other, but the other is not the first. One paints a picture in our mind that we're like, oh, and the other one leaves it more open. It's making things concrete. If we found books that we like, the writer's illustration and bringing us into the world makes a difference. And that is done through specifics. So the story we can write can be, first of all, about vacation, like we did last time. If you want to keep going with the story, you can write about something you overcame, if that comes to mind, or something else. But it should be within, like I'd say, try to follow at least one of the first two, unless you really feel that you can't. The idea for what we're trying to do here is to write a story where our story has an ending, a beginning point and an ending point. And we want to be as specific as possible with the different elements. Okay, so it's not my sister, it's my older sister, Sarah. Okay, let's go. Let's take 13 minutes and check in where we are after that. And any questions?
Is it an individual work?
Yes,
Are we
it's
gonna
individual. It's
compare?
individual work. It
Yeah,
doesn't need to be more than a few lines.
How long is it supposed to be this story? How long?
Until it's done.
Can you show us the slide about what we have to do in it? What the specific things that need to be in the short paragraph? Okay.
It's a single story, beginning 10. Like, listen, this could be 10 lines. It
All right.
doesn't need to be as elaborate. The main idea is that there is a beginning and that there is an end. And where we would leave things not specific to be specific. That's the purpose of today.
Okay, so how many sentences does the story?
Listen, whatever you would answer your students is probably the answer.
5, 6 sentences? It depends.
So I'm saying again, till the story is done. If you don't feel it's done, it needs more space. If you want me to give you a number, I would say you could probably do it in, I don't know, less
Daniel.
than 15. Yeah.
We had a lecture in studies back then, many years ago. She let us, she gave us a task to write a beginning of a story. And I invented something. It wasn't something real. I invented something. It was a full page of a beginning. And I found it לא מזמן. I found it and I was curious to continue my story. So now to write a whole story, it's interesting. I think
Amazing.
it's
I'm
nice.
very happy to hear it. Well, you're definitely welcome to follow along with that, as long as there is a beginning.
No. I want to write something real.
All right. Something new. Go for it.
Daniel, I choose the subject, right? It doesn't matter whatever I choose, right?
Yeah, as long as it's a story that has a beginning and an end.
Okay.
If I'm done, I have to wait.
That is correct.
Okay.
Wow.
Yes, dear. Oh, סליחה.
Right, how are we doing? Do we need more time? Yes, all right, great. Again, there's no right or wrong answer, just whatever flows, as long as the story ends at some point. Who finished their story so far? 1, 2, 3. Okay, we need some more time then. For those who finished the story, I'd say review it and make sure that everything that needs to be specific, that can be specific, is specific.
I don't really know how to like, I can add details, you know, with no end. How do I know that that's okay?
Right now, I'd say whatever you have is probably fine. Like it's we're learning to write stories.
Okay.
So right now, just story as best you see fit. The story ends. We understand that there's a beginning and an end.
Yeah, no, I'm just asking because I can develop it like, you know, forever.
It shouldn't be with the characters, plots, setting of time, and to pay attention to it or to write whatever. I think, Daniel.
I'm
etc.
fine with, again, like the story doesn't need to be
Story, right?
long. The story does not need to be long. It does need to have an ending. So like it could be a minimalistic plot. The main thing is that we try to be specific everywhere we need to be specific. All right, I'm gonna give us 4 more minutes. We'll have more time to work on this later, and also, you know, next week we're gonna work on the same story a bunch. So. Glad that some of us are smiling and having fun.
I don't know if you can call it story, אבל זה משל.
Okay, that's completely fine.
Okay, also finished.
All right, we're gonna wait 4 more minutes for those who are not yet. Appreciate everyone's patience.
בערת מוכ... ואז אני אלך. שתבוא עכשיו, סיוון. שתבוא עכשיו, סיוון. אוי, נו.
כרמית, שימי על השתק.
סליחה.
All right. So let's go through a little bit of the beginning of this. We're then going to take a little break and we'll come back and continue with specifics. Okay, so of what we have here, let's have someone who feels they finished their story early. All right, volunteer. All right, Ravital.
Okay, do you want to read my story?
Yes, please, read your story.
Okay, so the story is about the blue and more blue. If you think about it, what is blue? Blue is the sea, the sky, or even a feeling. Back the corona started, feelings were strong, and the feeling of vacation or freedom was in my bones. Dreaming about the color blue took me to another place. I was dreaming about Mauritius or Seychelles. I saw pictures of the sea and most of all looked at the sky. I was dreaming of blue when I was blue. My family at the corona passed and everything was open. My family and I went on camping in Tveria to feel the nature, to be close to the water and sleep under the blue sky. I always think why they choose the blue for sadness if the things we think about them makes us feel good.
Okay, so first of all, very nice. That was, I'd say, more of a poem than a story. It definitely elicited types of feeling, but my question is here, where, okay, so first of all, I would say, what is the story? Like the beginning to end, like what happened here?
You asking me or them?
Yeah, I'm asking you.
What happened? So the first of all was about the thinking blue, thinking positive, and finding the balance between positive and negative. It's a story about the corona time. It's a story about what I was feeling back then and what happens to me at the end.
So I think one of the good things here, while this doesn't follow a traditional story structure and that there isn't really, it's more of an observation rather than a story, there's some really good things. Again, I didn't give any criteria for how this needed to be. However, a few things here, as we were listening, which words conjured images in our mind?
Blue.
Someone not Ravital now, as we were listening.
Blue.
Blue. Okay, but like more specifically.
The names of the countries that she dreamt of.
Names of the countries, Mauritius and Seychelles. Now, I've never been to either, but for me, images similar to Greece with, beaches popped into my mind. I don't know what popped into your minds, but we see here that blue sky and clouds don't elicit the same things as the names of specific places that we didn't necessarily go. And looking through this, I see that when it comes to specifics, there are some specific things here. We think of camping in Tveria under a blue sky. There isn't something left open. And it's the specific, it's not like Ravital said, dreaming about the color blue. in countries that have blue, countries that I visited, all right, fine. But Mauritius and Seychelles, they're not things that are commonly used. They are specific. And to me, that's what at least triggered for me the strongest type of response. So I think regarding that, it's something that may be how you poetically speak anyway. But as far as conveying an idea, this definitely qualifies as use of something specific to make something more real. It's not I'm generically going camping. We have a specific place to be. And even if we haven't there, we've seen it on a map. And that makes a very big difference. Okay, really, really nice. Another volunteer. Let's take, I think, one or two more, and then we'll take a break. Who would like to go next? Okay, Sarah. Let's hear your story.
Okay. My vacation to Holland. 2 years ago, my family and I flew to Holland for 2.5 weeks. It definitely was very exciting. It took us a long time to prepare this trip, about 6 months ahead. We rented a car and drove to many interesting places. We also slept in different cities. We loved visiting different markets such as the cheese market. We also tasted different kinds of cheese. The atmosphere was great. The peak hour vacation was visiting the huge amusement park, the Efteling amusement park. My kids are definitely looking forward to the next trip, and we're hoping to plan it as soon as possible.
All right. So
I miss your kids.
okay, so Sarah, I want to say here, by the way, that this is a very good example of a story that nearly completely missed the specifics element. And now, by the way, it story structure wise, there is a clear element here. This is something you've recalled, and it shows that like it felt you were there. However, when it comes to specifics, I want us to point out, going through this, how many openings there were to make it real. And again, like Sarah is not a novice storyteller, but I want to show and I want to illustrate just how much it impacts our storytelling. So I want us to go through this together. Okay, and I took some notes. Let me just get my screen share on. Okay, so this is Sarah's story. Okay, vacation in Holland. You're saying that the vacation will happen for 2.5 weeks, but listening to the story, okay, and I'm being like more specific about the questions here, we have no idea what happened, even though you did talk for a little bit about it. You said it was exciting, but except for a cheese market in a city I don't know, doing a thing that wasn't specified, we have no idea what was exciting. 6 months to prepare opens a lot of opportunities for specifics, dividing responsibilities in the family, real day-to-day things that we go through preparing for stories, but we have no idea. We drove, and by the way, like I'm saying, your story is a perfect illustration of what we're normally doing, which is where in our minds, it's as clear as day. But when we put it to pen, we're not eliciting something like the Seychelles. You drove to many interesting places, no specifics. You visited many cities, no specifics. We went to many places in those cities, like a cheese market, and tried many types of cheese. And then you went to an amusement park, and we don't know what you did there. So I would offer to you to try to, I'd say, cut out half of these, but make the others more specific. And through doing so, you'll see how, and I'd like you to have this viewed for the end of class, because I think for all of us, we'll hear a really big difference. And now, by the way, any one of those could be a story. One interesting place in the adventures there. But I want to show how this is the perfect illustration of something where the specifics exist, but we naturally take them out and provide generalizations that are harder to connect to. Okay, so when I say let's go specific and we're fighting our instincts, Sarah's story here, this is a 2.5 week vacation. Every day is an adventure. And it's something that with how she presented it, like we're sure we're conveying it. But when I point that out a second time, and I'm sure that other stories we have here have these written the original drafts, I want to show how for us, if we want to make our public speaking more powerful, just how much specifics can disappear when we convey a story to others, because we know that it's there. It's our story. So, Sarah, for example, what's one type of cheese you particularly enjoy? What was its name? You're on mute. So,
It was with pesto.
ooh, see? Now, by the way, already, do we see a difference? If she says the pesto cheese was especially good, we know what pesto
Yeah.
tastes like, right? That
Right.
already is more specific. That already makes that kind of a difference.
The reader feels already the taste of the cheese.
Exactly. The reason that I put it up and illustrated it, by the way, is exactly because your story is a perfect example. Like, it's not even making up a poem about, the color blue or what a future, vacation might look like. This is real. Like, how long ago did this happen?
How long ago?
Yeah.
It was before the corona. Two
Before
and a
Corona.
half. Yeah, two and a half
So
years ago.
2018, 2019, like,
Right.
this is something that were I to right now have you talk about it and ask you questions, you would fill in all of these blanks. And this is why I want to show you why the specifics class is so important. Because before we go into story structure, and this is something which, if we don't have specifics, our stories are much more bland. They're much less eliciting of response. We can't write a story if we naturally leave out the details that make things real. Okay, so we're going to take a break right now. Think it's a good time for a break? Yeah. Awesome.
Good.
So the time is 4:55. We're going to take a 15-minute break. Let's be back here at 5 o'clock in 10 minutes. We're going to continue hearing a few more stories, getting some tips on how to write things more specific, and call it a day. We'll see you all soon. Hello, everyone, and we are back for part 2 of our class on specifics. All right.
Daniel,
Yes,
can I ask you something?
of course.
I didn't exactly understand the word specifics. What do you mean to give details, to focus on one thing? What did you mean?
Okay, specifics. Okay, so we'll do a bit more about specifics, and then we're going to keep reading our stories. Are we all back? I did attendance in the beginning of class, so if somebody joined since then, please let me know that you are here. Otherwise, I'm going to use that list. Okay, so for specifics, to understand the difference that I'm looking for in the story, words like it, you, they, etc. should be replaced with specific words and terms. Not we went to a place. What place is it? We ate good food. A specific type of food. Generalizations don't work. Specific names, titles, details, they bring they're strong sensory descriptions. They bring background context. We use real names, places, and attributes. It's something which is not normal for people most of the time. When audiences hear real places and things, they imagine themselves there, like pesto cheese. Audiences do not connect to generalizations. But why do we speak in generalizations? Because we were there. So we fill it into our mind, but we don't convey it, not as writers and not as speakers.
So
Now,
to be very clear,
to be specific. So I'll give it, so there are 2 examples. One, he lived in his home versus David lived in Stepova Street in Odessa, a port city on the Black Sea in southern Ukraine. Okay, he lived in his home. I know David, I know where he lives. So he lived in his home, but doesn't convey it to
He
anyone
has a
else.
beautiful garden with red and green flowers.
So, but even there, a beautiful garden, beautiful is an adjective. What makes it beautiful? Let's get specific.
So I say with red and green flowers, big trees, kaele.
But
Right?
true, but even there's much more room for
Odd.
specificity. For example, so
It's good
words
we are
like
teachers and not writers.
that's fine. That's why we're in this course. But I'm saying that instead of saying beautiful garden, beautiful is, by the way, another generalizing word. We could say his garden had 6 beautiful, really tall pine trees and a square meter of red and green flowers that were shaped like tulips. So one of them, because I said, we know what a pine tree is, those Christmas trees. 5 of them is different from 25 pine trees. If I say his garden was completely full of pine trees, there was no room to walk. Different mental image. We're working on priming the imagination. And that's very different. So I'd say words like beautiful, amazing, cut those out. They are just as vague as him or it. Let's look at one other example. This one was used a lot in the last Hishtalmut that I did on public speaking, which was on Zoom, but during COVID. 1 second. So here. She learned skills to overcome the teaching obstacle. Okay, in this same drill with the last group, someone talked about how someone learned the skills to overcome the obstacle. That's very different from Debbie learned to use the Zoom mute feature to stop interruptions during a reading of Macbeth. Okay, see the difference? One is the first one, the second is covered in the first, but not the other way around. Okay, so these are 2 examples of what I mean by specifics. We
Yes, I
want
understand.
every word that could be interpreted to be specific. All right, so I want us to take now 5 more minutes to go through our stories and try to make things specific that are not. Again, to clarify what I mean by specifics, names, places, and attributes. We want to use them. We want to use real things. If there's a character, give them a name. If they did a thing, what thing it was. The story doesn't need to be long. Then make them up.
Sometimes we don't remember details. Just
Make them up. It
right from your
doesn't.
memory.
The story doesn't need to be real. It must have specifics. The whole purpose today is whatever you say will have no generalizations.
So just to make up.
As long as it's specific. If you say went to the family vacation to the restaurant and ate food, so you make up, went to McDonald's and ate 2 extra large fries. Like that's fine. The point though is that we're not generalizing. But they are exactly
How
right.
can I be more specific at my poem or story?
So for your story, it was more of a, I'd say, poetic prose than a story, like it's an observation. But within that,
When all the story was about the blue, so I said blue skies, blue.
so I'm saying for what we're going to learn next week, this isn't actually a story.
It's not.
But because there's nothing happens, there's no beginning or end. It's just your opinion on something. So I'm saying, but that's already for next week, where I'm going to have us actually follow a story structure. For today, everything is fine. For this, I would say maybe more details about camping in Tveria, more details about a specific sky, things like that could be done. Like what you wrote was very nice. It's and for what we did today, I think that it definitely works. Okay, so time right now is 5:17. Let's take 3 minutes, review your story. If there's something you think may be a generalization, try to make it more specific. And sometimes, by the way, our stories can have many stories in one. For example, Sarah's vacation has 50 stories within that. So focusing on one if possible. All right, let's take 3 minutes and then we're gonna come back and review. And Natalie, you're gonna go first.
I want to ask something about specifics. If I'm writing a story and I'm being specific,
By the way,
what is the line in order to be more specifics then?
for the sake of this course, I would say there is no limit to being too specific. It's we're fighting a natural tendency to generalize so much that I'm really not bothered by the reverse.
Okay.
I
Daniel,
would
can
say,
you reshare the slide that says about it?
oh, what I just had, sure. All right, ready to give it a second try? Okay, so let's start with Natalie and
Can I
we'll go
read
from,
also?
well, yeah, we're having, okay, Natalie will be first, Siada is gonna be second, and we'll go from there. Siada, you're gonna choose who you want to hear after that. All right, Natalie, let's hear your story. And I'd like everyone unless you're writing a story, try to track through, like if you can write like the major beats of the story or what you feel, if something specific stands out to you. So something specific worked for you, you felt, you thought, write it down. Better than working from memory. All right, Natalie, take it away.
So Greece stuck in the middle of nowhere. 10 years ago, my husband and I went to a honeymoon in Greece. We were there 5 days from Sunday to Thursday. On Tuesday, we decided to go to an ATV trip. We didn't have much money that time, so we took the cheapest ATV. We started our trip when suddenly the ATV got stuck in the middle of a small mountain. We looked for a phone number on the ATV, but we found out that our phones didn't have reception. We went down the mountain, looked for someone who can help us. We found a man named David. He gave us his phone. We reached the man from the ATV store, and after 4 hours, they came to take us from there. They gave us the most expensive ATV for an hour to make us feel better.
All right. So first of all, for us, were we able to follow the story?
Yes.
So story-wise, by the way, and we didn't even get to, story structure yet, but this actually really does cover a lot of what is needed in a story structure. So I'd say that to keep the story for next week, definitely a good story to use for it. Now, listening through, what specifics do we see that Natalie had, that Natalie added into the story?
David, the name David.
David, very good. A person's name didn't have to be there, but it
Just
added.
made it up.
That's
The name
great. Making it up is fine. It felt, by the way, that was something you added in a second review.
Because
And
in
that's great.
Greece, no one named David in Greece.
That's fine. I mean, maybe Google a Greek name, but okay, good. What else? What other adjectives?
In the middle of the mountain, she said, not like in some place. No?
Like that it was somewhere on a trail out of reception that worked, but that wasn't conveyed through specifics. Anything
Okay.
else stood out to us as particularly memorable? What elicited feeling? Right.
She used many adjectives. I mean, the cheapest, the most expensive.
Exactly. Very good. So now, how much did the cheapest ATV cost?
You ask me?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Okay.
was
What do
10
we
years
can
ago.
make it up? What do you think a cheap ATV would cost?
$100.
$100. Okay. Is there a difference between the cheapest ATV, or we got the ATVs at $100? Maybe we need cheapest to explain it. And then later they gave us the most expensive ATV at $5,000 a use afterwards.
Okay,
See the difference?
yeah.
So I want to say Sabina made an excellent observation. You used many adjectives that could have been better explained. At the same time, you clearly went over it with a comb and you added some specifics where they wouldn't have been there. And I do believe that your story was more descriptive as a result, because you could easily say, my husband and I, we went to another country, we went on a trail, our ATVs got stuck, we found someone whose phone to use, and we came back. So is there a story here? Definitely. Am I emotionally connected by things that aren't generalized? Not at all. And I think that's why the name David stood out, because when you reviewed it, you're like, what are some of the openings? So, but taking it a step further, many of the adjectives you used are some of the things to flesh it out. If I know cheapest and most expensive, we don't know what this means. We don't even know percentages. If we say, when I teach students Model UN, and if any of you come for the Model UN Ishtomot that I teach, one of the things that I talk about there is how when we bring examples, we'll use percentages. We don't know percentages. If Harel right now has a 35% increase in the amount of students in her class from last year to this year, that doesn't trigger with us. Even if conceptually we can guess that a regular class has 30 and now there's more like 40. But that it doesn't work. The less the mind has to interpret and travel, the more real it makes it. If I say Harel's class of 30 students with comfortable seating for 30 is now 43 students, you can all imagine a much more crowded classroom. So specifics really helps with that. So for Natalie, very good story, good review. And for Sabina, good observation. Those adjectives can actually be specifics themselves, and that can make it more grounded. All right, Siada, whenever you're ready.
Sagit is the name. Tiara is the last name.
Sorry, what's your first name?
Sagit.
Sagit.
Yes, yes. All right, so my story starts like this. Well, finally it happened. A vacation, finally we went to Sofia, Bulgaria. The first day we went, we saw snowy Bulgaria, because the previous night it started snowing. Everyone was so white and snowy when we got there. At night, we went to a restaurant called Social. There we ordered pizza and tortellini. The next day we went on hiking on a mountain with a tour guide. We also had a motorbike trip. It was great. I almost fell in that trip. The next night we went to a Hanukkah lightning, and there in a building called Vitosha with the Jewish community. There we met my cousin Liraz, who lives there for 14 years. The last day of the trip was having a day off with having a massage, masseuse over there, and we went to the Hyatt Museum. Finally, we went to the airport and came back home.
Okay, very nice. So this is one thing. First of all, I want to say very good to see where you added the specifics. For example, Vitosha, Liraz, there's certain like nouns and places that stood out to
I added
us.
for the second time because the first time
Exactly,
I didn't.
very good. So we can already see that our initial generalization review by our first review, we've added different things, which by the way stand out to us because it makes it richer. It's not how people normally speak. It already is adding something extra for the storyteller. Okay. Now here again, I will say that there are, like with Sarah, there's many stories within this story, but for all of us here, for those who are writing, what did we want to hear more about? What's like, which of these different action items, because we got an itinerary here, which of these we wanted to hear more about?
She said that she fell off a motorcycle. What was it?
Motorbike, yes.
I wanted to know how you felt. What happened if you were injured?
Very nice. You almost fell off a motorcycle. This could be something interesting. All right. Very good. What else? Let's hear more. What else do we hear in the story that could be more specified?
Her feelings, I think.
What?
כרמית, תמשיכי.
Karmit and then Einav.
So she said that finally they got to the airport. Something happened on the way to the airport.
Very nice. There could have been something on the way to the airport. Very good. Odea says more details about each place. That could help. Karmit, do you want to say something?
No, I said, I already did.
Oh, okay. Wonderful.
I
Sorry.
wanted to say
Einav, yeah.
that she was in Sofia, Bulgaria, and I didn't hear any feelings, and I think there were. So Sagit, share your feelings.
So on that, I want to.
Everything was telling what happened.
So I will say again that there wasn't a story in the sense of what we're going to learn next week. And that's already going to make a very big difference on everything we learned so far. And that's going to close the first part of this course. But this is why, like, without ideas and specifics, we can't really, like, stories without specifics are generalizations. So I want to first credit Sagit for very nicely adding, like, also pizza and tortellini. Did that like get added in the second review?
Yes,
Detailed,
exactly.
yes.
Very nice. Beautiful addition of nouns. However, we're still leaving some of the experiences open. By the way, I almost fell off a motorcycle. Very good identification. Finally got to the airport. The word finally was a trigger for me specifically. I heard about the Hyatt Museum. I'm like, what happened there? I have no idea. But
It
now,
was I made it up just for the second.
okay, well, if you make it up, you better be ready to talk about the mummy of Pharaoh Mehmet II, who was 1.40 meters, and you never thought a pharaoh would be that short, like that exact kind of thing. So it's good that you. So by the way, excellent. We're already able to hear what she added that drew it to stick in our minds the way it never would have without that. So we're seeing already by learning specifics, our stories are becoming richer. And it also leaves openings for us to see just how much detail we don't naturally give. And imagine how powerful we can all be as communicators when we start filling in the specifics. Like the communication with or without specifics, I can say for myself, for like stories and narratives that I build, shamayim va'aretz. It's like the way we naturally generalize and remove detail, it is that much more magical when it's added. Think of pesto cheese. Like that is the magic and the power. And I want to say very good on recognizing the different places. It won't be second nature yet, but by combing through, you picked up a lot of them and they were all noticed by the participants here. And how even a word like finally can bring curiosity. All right, let's get another one. Sagit, who do you want to hear from next?
Well, Natalie Red.
Yep.
Natalie Red. All right. Vika.
Vika.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I did try the story. I was late for the session. I entered 4:30. I tried to catch up and try to write this story, but it was a little bit hard
Vika,
today.
what would your story be about? Do you know?
I understood that you write about vacation. I started to write and during the break, and still I need time. Holidays and vacations are words that bring us joy, but for different people, they mean different things. For my husband, it's fishing. For my children, these are parks and what I wrote, and swimming pools. For me, these are shopping and museums. And here I stopped because I didn't have time and I missed the very beginning. I promise to finish it next time.
Okay, so this, so let's try. But when you're talking about a store, what's a store you like?
What kind of story I like?
What kind of store?
What kind of store? Shopping.
Which shop? Pick a
shop?
specific shop.
Shoes.
Pick not an
shoes.
item.
Let's take
store.
on the shoes, right?
A brand store. What's a store you like? The name of the store.
Motag.
Zara is a store. What is a store you like?
Let's take something more than Zara. Okay, let it be Zara and Mango. Let's leave it, Zara.
Okay. Now, what I would like you to do, first of all, is if you can right now, you're on a computer, right?
I am, yes.
Okay, I'm giving you right now, for the next 15 minutes while we're still here in class, Google a store you like, pick an item of clothing you like, learn the name of the item. For example, I went to Renoir this past week and I bought a jacket called the Chelsea. The Chelsea is a very attractive jacket. It's beige. It gets a little below your knees and it's made of a fabric that doesn't have rain bounce off. It can absorb water, but it's very warm. And I got the beige one in extra large and I really liked it. And I went back to get it in black and it was sold out in the entire country. I couldn't find it on the website. I couldn't find it anywhere.
This
So I
absolutely
called
the right
my
one.
friend Aviv, who just finished Vil Israel, and he's in Eilat. And I said, Aviv, can you find me the code? And I'm waiting to see if he can find it in Eilat. Okay.
Great.
Now, by the way, do you all see what I did there? Like, this is also a true story, but I followed the element of specifics. I gave, like, you've seen Renoir, even if you haven't shopped there. The code has a name. You now have a mental image of what a guy's code called a Chelsea does. You can also Google it. Okay. This is what we want us to say. So for Vika, I'd say, like, look for a store, pick an item, take us through that. Because when you're saying my husband likes
Okay.
fishing and I like shopping, it's still a
Yes.
generalization. It's not fun. We're trying to work on here. Okay. So you can do that. Vika, who do you want to hear from next? Pick someone.
Do we write about, I didn't write about a vacation.
You didn't have to.
Ah, okay.
I said as
That's
an
what I
anchor.
understood enough because
So-
I missed the very
Okay,
beginning.
no, my story isn't about a vacation, so
Yeah. No,
Okay,
what
that's
I said
Then-
first. So I said, as far as anchors, if we're looking for anchors using from last week, I said the prompts are vacation, what we talked about last week. If you want to continue your story from last week,
Okay.
and now I'm showing the slide for you, something you overcame or something else, as long as we see specifics being used. Okay. So Vika, who do you want to hear from next?
Who wants to talk?
Nope, you pick. Don't ask.
I pick Karen, Mirav,
Karen.
Bat-El.
No, pick
Karen.
one. Pick one. Karen. Karen,
Yes, I'm here.
let's hear your story. And Vika, find your item and find your store, and then you're going to tell us about it.
Okay.
Okay, so 2 years ago.
Can you make your
my
camera a
hus-
little bit lower?
Yes, sorry, I'm with my phone and I have an internet problem, so I'm trying to be. 2 years ago, my husband and I traveled to Greece for a week. It was the first travel overseas since I have my kids. We stayed in the Abaton Resort. We traveled a few cities like Heraklion, and we visited the Cathedral of Saint Minas. It's a magnificent church. It has a beauty, power, and the architecture, architecture is incredible. It was relaxing and a nice trip, but also it was a bit hard to be away from my kids. That's it.
Okay, so let's see here, because some things were definitely added because of specifics. Did anyone pick anything up? What did we catch, and what did we want to hear more about? Okay, thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone? Right.
Talked about her opinion, about her feelings for her children, and how did she feel during the trip. It was also, and she shared her feeling. It was nice. It was detailed.
Okay, so interestingly enough, I would say for that line of hard to be away from kids, as the majority of our participants here, I think, have kids, she didn't need to go specific for that to be extremely relatable. But I would also argue that hard to be away from kids was not the moral of the story, but it stole the show from everything else. And I think the reason was lack of specifics in some of the other places. Karen, can you read your story again, please? Everyone, I'm going to ask now that you take notes. Please take a paper and pen, and anything you want to hear more about, please write down. Okay, I want us to listen to this as a, aware audience. All right, Karen, we're ready.
Okay, so 2 years ago, my husband and I traveled to Greece for a week. It was the first travel overseas since I have my kids. We stayed in the Abaton Resort. We traveled a few cities like Heraklion, and we visited the Cathedral of Saint Minas. It's a magnificent church. It has beauty, power, and the architecture is incredible. It was very nice and relaxing trips, but also it was hard to be away from my kids.
All right. Listening to this a second time, what do we want to hear more about?
She said we
Again,
visited
feelings.
many cities like Heraklion. What else?
Exactly. Many cities. That's general. Give us all the cities. Okay. What else?
Another thing I want, I
Relaxing,
think,
it was relaxing.
One second. Rachel, then Ravital. Rachel, yeah.
More places to hear about.
More places we could hear about. That's true. Ravital?
when she said that it was the first time that she took her children, I wanted to know how was with the children aboard.
She didn't take them. It was the first trip without the kids.
Without the kids, I heard with the kids.
No,
I
without
think-
the kids.
I
It was the
think,
first time without my kids.
1 second. Merav?
What?
yes, I think the children caught our attention because she started the story with it and she ended it with it. So it gave us a frame of away from children.
That's actually a really good point. I think story structure wise, if the story was how vacation without kids made vacation less of a vacation, I think there's some really strong idea there. And I didn't notice it before, but you're absolutely right. It's like me and my husband went to Greece for the first time in 2 years. Like, do kids need to be mentioned? If they're mentioned and life without kids is part of it, there's something here. And I want to add, to me, listening it to the second time, my question was, first trips I have my kids. How many kids? What ages? What kind of a difference is this? I have no idea. I assume there's at least two.
Where did you
also
leave
heard
them?
the word relaxing, so it was relaxing probably because the kids weren't with you. It was
Exactly.
more
So
relaxing.
all of that could be fleshed out. We don't know, and keep this in mind for next week. We don't know what world you're leaving, but the world you're leaving, by how you describe and start and end with it, takes more precedent. Now the thing is this: what else do we want to hear more about in the story? Because there's one key thing, which is like adjective city. Anyone?
She described the church as something
Yeah,
special.
very good. Tell me about her description of the church.
The architecture, the views. I don't know what verbs she used there or what adjectives.
Beauty.
I didn't.
Exactly.
Beauty. What did she say else?
So I want to get
power.
So I want to
Yes.
say, so to echo what Merav is saying. Merav, do you have something more to add, or was that it?
What again?
Sorry, I cut you off in the end. What did you say?
I said she used a lot of words to describe the church. It was powerful. It had it was beautiful. What else? I don't remember.
Exactly. So I want to stress, and this is an important lesson in specifics. Specifics can be found in lack of nouns. Specifics can be found in the presence of adjectives. Okay, keep
But
in
she
mind.
used nouns, I must say.
No. She used now. No, first of all, when she said cities like Heraklion and the St. Minnis Church, both of those, I wouldn't be surprised if they came in the first review. And we've seen a very good job here of us looking at the natural places that nouns are missing. Wait a second. But when we came to the church, what did she say? It was a magnificent church with beautiful power. The art is incredible. That doesn't tell us anything specific. And that's where the description specifically of what was seen would need to come in. And I feel that when we talk about a trip, an Ableton Resort, first of all, a name of a place, excellent, but no details of what was in the resort. So few cities, we get a specific city, we get a specific church. So there's definitely a grounding, which we wouldn't have had without that review. However, once we got those, we don't have any specifics about them. So you see, Karen, and within that, without specifics, we're left to feeling. And the lack of kids and the presence of kids seems to, like we said, that sort of took the story from the vacation. But the vacation was given lots of adjectives that we don't connect to. If I see right now, I went outside of my apartment and I saw the most beautiful person I have ever seen. Unless I have enough excitement in my voice to carry us through, every one of us is imagining something different. And maybe we're also imagining what Daniel's taste might be like. You know, that's where it goes. Adjectives without specifics leave us lost. They don't help us connect. They're, I would say, sort of like cheating, because we ride on them to convey our own emotion. but we don't convey anything to the listener when we're speaking publicly. Pesto cheese beats a magnificent, beautiful, and incredible church every single time. Okay? Anyway, so Karen, very good job in reviewing Heraklion, St. Minutes, Ableton Resort, all these things that you pulled up. They needed more description to be able to fill that place, but I think you can see right now how where those things would fit naturally would work. And I would also, for this story, which I think you should save for next week, to continue with, information about your kids too. My first trip since I have my two kids, you know, Sasha and Ben, who are 5 and 3 years old.
Okay.
Beautiful. Karen, who do you want to hear from next? I think we have time for one more story.
Revital.
Revital.
Which
You read
trip?
her poem before that.
I wrote a poem. It's not a story, so.
All right, it's fine. Whatever is. Is it a poem with specifics?
No, but I read
Read
it.
it already.
Ah, you want me?
No, she read it already.
Blue
Someone
poem.
who
Okay,
did.
so
Sorry, someone new.
I
Karen,
wrote
pick
something.
someone new.
I wrote. Do you want to do it or?
Karen chooses.
Okay. So do you
Karen,
want
who
to
do
do
you,
it?
Karen, who do you choose?
Ah,
Rachel.
Rachel?
Yes, me. You talk to me? Yeah?
If you didn't present yet, then yes.
Which Rachel?
Okay, so, my baby is here. In the last 2 days, I will start with the title. I can say all for the best. In the last 2 days of Hanukkah holiday, I went with my husband on holiday in Jerusalem. I was sure I was going to enjoy and really go back to work with a renewed strength. And really the first time since the birth of my child from a year ago that I go alone with my husband. And I really went out with the goal of having fun. But unfortunately, that is not what happened. On the way to the hotel, I felt I was starting to get cold, but I tried not to think about that. It was stronger than me, but it was stronger than me when I returned from the Western Wall 2 hours after we arrived in Jerusalem. I was really sick. I could not stand because of the weakness. I felt very bad. I was just waiting for the morning to come and go home. I was a little upset, but I chose to look at the positive thing in the story. Thank God it was not a corona, and already the next day I felt good. Sum up and conclusions, sometimes things go things don't go according to what we want, but we should take everything in a proportion and believe that everything is for the best. That's it.
All right, wonderful. So for those listening, what did we want to hear? First of all, like within the experience, so what is the story? What is Rachel telling us here?
Vacation
Anyway.
that went wrong. She was sick in the middle of vacation that she was waiting for a long time.
Yep, she was sick during a vacation. What could we have used more specifics on?
Maybe describing how she felt, like being sick at all.
Very good. She says she felt bad.
Ointment.
Yeah, we don't know what bad is.
No, but she said that she couldn't stand because she was very weak.
That was one part of the description, but she also said it started to get cold. She felt bad. Later she looked at positive things. So like these are
I
things.
would like to hear about her disappointment about the trip that went wrong.
Yeah.
But she said that she was disappointed, but she tried to look at the good side.
You're right. But within that, exactly. What was disappointing? What didn't you get to do?
Done.
Okay, what
You
else?
can- Listen, Daniel, sometimes you don't have to be specific, refer to things. For example, with the children and with the fact that she was disappointed because we're married. So we know what was disappointed from. The fact that she wasn't able to be with her husband alone without screaming and asking and mom. So we don't have to be specific. We understand her.
Amit, I think you're right, because a mother knows what when I said was disappointed, so a mother knows what it is. But is it good?
I'm the one that came before that said that on her way to her airport, she felt sorry that she didn't saw her children or something like that. That's the main thing that I remember from her story, being honest. כאילו. העובדה שהיה חסרים לילדים. אז לפעמים אני אומרת, כאילו, כמה צריך להיות ספציפי, דניאל? לנו לפעמים זה כאילו, אני לא רואה בזה חיסרון ספציפי, because I understand her. אתה מבין מה? Do you understand me?
I feel that I think, first of all, I completely understand, and I personally cannot relate to the specific mothering side of experiences at the moment, as much as I may try. I will also say, though, that this is very much an audience and state specific thing, that if you're looking to convey this story, for example, to your high school students or the random audience who get at a TED Talk, it won't necessarily work.
The listeners, always the audience.
Yes,
so
but children don't always understand what we want to say. For us, it's obvious, but not for the children that we teach.
Exactly. So not only is it obvious, by the way, I think maybe I'm wrong here, but maybe there are different ways to be disappointed. I think that being like disappointed at wasting money is different from disappointing and lacking specific time with a husband.
It wasn't wasting money. You can ask her.
For sure. No, okay. If everyone here agrees there's only one type of disappointment which can happen on a vacation, then in this specific circumstance, I'm happy to, stand corrected. But I think the general idea here is when we look at this, we're looking to flesh out something that in other parts of the story, when I say I felt ill, there's very difference between I'm losing my balance, I was too cold, I was coughing blood, I couldn't see clearly, I felt weak. All of these are different. All of them elicit different types of responses rather than I felt bad, I felt ill, I was unhappy. Adjectives and descriptive words do not bring specifics, but we sometimes feel we do. And we've seen today how we put that type of energy into our delivery. But listening to it from the other side, we're like, hey, we don't know. We don't know what a beautiful church is. We don't know what I felt bad is. And I want us to be aware of this, because if we're looking for our stories to hit home, which is what our goal is as public speakers, when we're speaking to our students, we want them to listen. We want them to take in what we say. And we can see how, as we saw today with some of our stories, it was harder for the audience to hook on, to connect. And if we naturally speak like this, we shouldn't be surprised that sometimes people find it hard to listen if we naturally drop detail. I can see when I started doing competitive public speaking and competitive debate, I didn't use examples at all. A lot of generalization with a lot of emotion. But the key is if we can fuse that same emotion to something specific, like pesto cheese, for example, or like a free 5,000 shekel, or $1 Jeep for 1 hour with the springs and driving faster over the dust that I got as compensation. That is more real than me talking about the amazing, incredible, astounding, life-changing ride I had on a Jeep. Adjectives are not our friends when it comes to specifics. And I'm happy to see here that in all the stories, we see how the nouns were added and how there is an understanding. And in all the examples we saw, there was a critical review and moving closer to a place where we don't have as many stories or details, but they are more specific, which was the goal of today. So I want to wrap up for today. As you all know, I like to finish on time or a little bit early. So I'd like us to reach a place to summarize is we want to use real names, places, and attributes and things that will help people imagine what they see. And today we saw how we naturally flow to adjectives because we see the mental image in our mind. Learning to describe it a lot of the time is the key to being more clear. We want to take he lived in his home to he lived on Stepova Street in Odessa on the Black Sea. We want to see that she learned to overcome the obstacle. The obstacle was students interrupting during a class reading of Macbeth. And by using mute on Zoom, the students who were reading and getting interrupted and even laughed at weren't disturbed. And they spoke much better. Okay, so this is our goal with specifics. I want to open our mind to being aware of this because next week, when we get to story structure, it's going to be essential for us creating full narratives to be able to do that. So at this point, are there any questions for everyone that someone would like to ask?
Daniel?
Yes.
I was late. Could you check, please, if I'm in the list?
I will do that. Let's let everyone go and I'll check the attendance list. So if everyone just wait 1 second. Are there any other questions relevant for everyone here?
Is there a task for this week?
So for this week, there is no task. For next week, after the end of next week, we're going to have our task on story structure. And we're going to continue from, so that next week, there's going to be a task which needs to be submitted after next class. What's that? So Elena Sawiski, and if you can stay a minute afterwards also, and Vika, and everybody else, you have been great. It's been a great class. Love to see you all. Let's dream about specifics and see you all.
Daniel, I
in 2 weeks.
feel now very weird.
There's no way to say bye to everybody, and then so bye everyone. Not sure.
Do you want me to stay? You may you say my name.
Yes,
You want me
yes.
to stay? Okay, well.